It begins with fire. Flames crawl along the seafront. Buildings glow like torches, windows coughing heat into the night. The sky is thick with smoke and tracer fire. Somewhere beyond the dunes, a siren wails, then cuts out mid-note. On the beach, men huddle in ragged lines, like stitches holding a wound together. Among them is Private Tom Hale, 20 years old, a factory boy from Birmingham. Sand grits his teeth. Fear pounds in his ribs. He grips his rifle so tight his fingers have gone numb. He thinks of home, the stink of machine oil in the workshop, his father staring blankly when loud bangs echoed in the street. His father never spoke about the last war. He just drank. Hale enlisted to escape that silence. Now he's trapped in it. A shadow passes. Engines scream. Stukas. Men dive into the sand. Hale presses his cheek against the grit, tasting salt and ash. Then, crump, crump, crump. The bombs tear into the beach. The ground bucks like a living thing. Sand pours over Hale's helmet rim. Shrapnel sings. When he dares lift his head, the beach is torn with craters and shouts. He wants to run. He almost does. But he swallows it. Because he promised himself he'd never be like his father, broken by silence and fear. Not here, not now. 2 days earlier, it had been different. Roads lined with hedges, heat shimmering above the tarmac. The British Expeditionary Force falling back, village by village. Rumours everywhere. A line broken, a line held. A counter-attack no one could find on a map. Hale learned to read retreat by sound. The thud of boots, the rattle of mess tins, the sudden silence when they realised they'd marched the wrong way. They crossed bridges that might be gone tomorrow, past refugees pushing carts, prams, loaded with their whole lives. A woman offered Hale bread, called him Mon Petit. He didn't know French, but he knew kindness. At a crossroads, a staff car hissed past. Officer inside never looking at them. The men joked, "There goes the war, lads," because joking was easier than the truth. The war was going, and they were being shoved ahead of it. That night they lay under a cold sky. Hale stared upward, counting the seconds between distant flashes and the low roll of thunder that followed. His stomach cramped with hunger. Someone coughed, someone prayed. A lorry backfired, and 6 men sat bolt upright, puppets on a string. By the time they reached the coast, the air reeked of diesel and smoke. The sea stretched flat and cold. Men stood in the shallows, trousers clinging, waiting for boats that were specks on the horizon. The line shuffled forward, broke apart whenever the dive bombers came. A corporal with a gravel voice told them to dig in. "Keep it tight, lads, we're going home," which really meant, if we're lucky. The first Stukas scattered them. The second taught them there was nowhere to hide. The third taught them not to bother, because you can't outrun what falls from the sky. Hale pulled a man from a crater. The man's hands shook too hard to hold his helmet. Hale set it on his head and realised the man was older than his father. War makes ages sit wrong on faces. At dusk, the beach turned strange, half light, half shadow. Wrecked lorries, helmets upside down like bowls, the sea breathing in and out. Somewhere, a chaplain held a service. Hale scraped a shallow trench with a mess tin. His fingers trembled. "5-star accommodation," he muttered. A few lads let out the ghost of a laugh. The night wasn't safe. It was just a pause. Bombers came without sirens. Flares drifted. Tracers stitched the dark. Hale closed his eyes and saw fires in puddles, faces lit by forbidden cigarettes. He slept in slices, 10 minutes, then awake again, drowning slowly in exhaustion. Dawn turned the horizon grey, and he realised light didn't make things better, just clearer and crueler. The first boat he tried was too crowded. Petty officer waved them back. Engines roared. A man slipped between pier and hull and never came up. The boat moved off. The line closed. Hale hated the waiting. Waiting gnawed. It left room for pictures he didn't want. His mother's hands, his sister's thin face, the emptiness in his father's eyes. Pain he could carry. Fear he could fight. Helplessness undid him. So he looked for something he could do. It found him. A medic shouted for help, dragging a man with both legs shredded. Hale slid his arms under the man's shoulders. The surf bit cold into his shins. Blood soaked his sleeves. The man gasped, too fast, too high. Halfway out, a wave nearly knocked them under. Hale gritted his teeth, dragged harder. Another lad grabbed the man's feet. Together, they hauled him onto a boat already too full. "Next!" someone yelled. Hale went back. Another wounded man, and another. He stopped counting. His body worked on its own. Lift, drag, stumble, lift. His fingers went numb, but they still worked. When the Stukas returned, Hale threw himself over a man with a chest wound. Bombs pounded the beach, shredding hues into smoke and sand. Hale pressed his face down and waited for the world to settle. It didn't. Later, he found the moustached corporal barking men toward a makeshift pier of trucks and planks. "Move! Keep moving!" The pier swayed. Tyres slapped the waves. Somewhere, a boy cried for his mother. The boat at the end looked like salvation. Men scrambled aboard, jammed in tight. Hale hesitated, because behind him, a man limped. Hale's legs still worked. He hauled the man forward. "Go!" "Get in, you idiot," someone shouted, and a hand dragged Hale aboard. He stumbled into a crush of rifles and boots. The deck throbbed like a living beast. Someone swore. Someone vomited. Someone laughed a jagged laugh that sounded like a sob. They pushed off. The beach slid away. Bombs still fell, delicate as deadly birds. The boat carved a white wake towards the channel. Hale craned his neck, memorising it. The curve of the coast, the smoke bruising the sky, wrecks catching morning light. He wondered which part of him would stay buried there forever. The deck was slick. Hale leaned against a steel wall that popped with heat. His helmet pressed a groove into his forehead. A man next to him prayed on repeat, words slipping from his lips like a broken record. The engine drowned every heartbeat with one endless thrum. A petty officer moved through, offering a canteen. "Small sip." Hale drank. Water tasted like metal and mercy. Someone asked if they'd go back for more men. The officer didn't answer. England appeared as a smudge, then a strip, then a coast. The boat slowed, limping to shore. No one cheered. Cheering felt like something from another life. They shuffled down the ramp, like cattle too tired to care. The air smelled different. Wet rope, tea, diesel. Relief Hale didn't trust. Civilians handed out bread, mugs, cigarettes. A woman pressed a biscuit into his palm. "You're safe now." Hale nodded for her sake, not his. He sat on a crate, hands shaking, hiding them under his arms. The corporal passed, clapped his shoulder once. Still here. That was a miracle enough. A young officer told them they'd done well. He looked like a boy in his father's uniform. Hale wanted to laugh. He wanted to cry. He couldn't do either. So when asked for volunteers, he raised his hand. Doing was easier than sitting. That night in a drafty hall, Hale lay awake. He thought of Birmingham, the workshop, his father's silence. He thought of Dunkirk, of the moment he almost ran. He promised himself again, not that way. Never that way. Morning brought orders. It always does. Move here, form up there. Hale felt something hard settle inside. Dunkirk wasn't glory. He hadn't fired his rifle. He carried men. He stayed. He hadn't run. And that mattered. Marching from the docks, Hale heard voices shouting, "Well done, lads!" He nodded without looking. Praise felt like food when your stomach was still at sea. He knew now. The war would ask worse of him. It would ask him to stand in places where the sky tried to kill him, to carry weight that bled and screamed, to be brave when no one was watching. Could he be that man? Not always. Not every day, but maybe enough. At a street corner, Hale adjusted his webbing, wincing at bruises. He couldn't see the sea, but he imagined it. Flat, pale, full of boats heading the wrong way, because the right way was impossible. Later, they'd call Dunkirk a miracle. Hale wouldn't argue. But inside, the miracle were quiet choices. Men standing, men lifting, men giving up their place for someone limping. He didn't know where the army would send him next. Deserts, mountains, cities turned into traps. He only knew he'd left something of himself on that French sand, and something new was filling the space. Resolve, anger, loyalty. That night he sat outside with a mug of tea, scolding his tongue. A boy about his age sat beside him. They traded only 2 words. Birmingham, Leeds. Then they sat in silence. It was enough. A gull wheeled overhead. A train shunted in the distance. Hale looked at his hands. He'd keep them busy. If he couldn't stop the big things, he could lift the small ones. If he couldn't fight a sky, he could carry a man. He tipped the cold dregs into the dirt and went back inside. Tomorrow would bring orders. Dunkirk would remain an ember he could touch whenever he needed to remember why he had promised himself not to run. He'd already stood still under a sky that wanted him gone. He did it once, he could do it again. Dunkirk was survival, but survival was only the beginning. The war would call Hale again to stand under skies burning for London, and later into the endless sands of North Africa. If you want to follow Hale's story through the battles that shaped the war, make sure you're subscribed. And in the comments tell me, did anyone in your family serve in the war? I'd love to hear their stories. Thanks for watching.